Tara. Good morning, everyone. All right, welcome to our Wednesday morning ritual. My name is Casey. I'm so thrilled to be with all of you live here on Instagram and Facebook. And then for those of you who join the replay on your own time, I know that mornings can be challenging and mornings with kids and what have you. So just know that I literally have 150 videos on my Instagram channel full of resources just like this of ways to get your day started that connect you more deeply to yourself. That's really the whole intention that we have here on Wednesday mornings. You know, a lot of coaches, a lot of people in the mindfulness sphere, tout a morning ritual, that how you start your day is super duper important. And I totally agree. The problem that I found in my own life and with my clients and the people that I work with is that there's so many rules and so many sort of like structures that people feel like they need to fit inside in order to make this morning routine or this act of meditation or mindfulness work for them. And what I find is that we're so obsessed with the rules and checking the boxes off that the goodness of the practices, the healing, the medicine doesn't actually get in because we're so consumed with doing it right. So here on Wednesday mornings, I'm here to just throw all of those rules out the window and provide a space for you to just meet yourself. And that my hope, my wish, my prayer is that something that you would experience here today, something that you would experience or hear or feel in your own body, in your own system, shifts in your own mind, that you would notice that and have a moment and say, oh, that's something that works for me. And then you would put that thing in your back pocket and use it for yourself moving forward. I'm a big believer, I'm a coach and a yoga teacher, and so I operate in these spheres of transformation and personal change. And I'm a big believer that, that the more we know ourselves, the more awareness that we develop around how we're wired and how we function and how we respond to things, the conditioning that we've received through our lives, the more we know ourselves, the more deeply we understand ourselves and how we got here. You really like the understanding kind of makes it so that you have less to fix, if that makes sense. So it's like we start with our minds of like, I need to fix this about myself and I want to heal this about myself. And I use fix in air quotes because that's not what, no one's broken, right? We're all just searching for greater levels of wholeness and cohesiveness inside, connectivity, impact, authenticity, integrity, all of those things. Sort of what we're looking for, not to be like fixed, rather. But what was I saying? Uh, that so many of us are so consumed with quote unquote fixing the things about ourselves that we think are broken. But what I have found is that when we just look under the hood, when we're willing to like look under these stones that we haven't been willing to overturn in the past, just by seeing what's there and by understanding ourselves more with compassion and non-judgment, that really there's like less to fix, that things just naturally kind of shift and change the more we know ourselves. So these Wednesday mornings are an invitation for you to know yourself more deeply, for you to understand how you're wired more deeply, for you to understand how your mind interfaces with your body and how that creates loops that then create your life. And it's so weird, the analogy that's coming to me, because I am alcohol free and I haven't drank for 4 years, and a lot of the work I do with clients is to help them change their relationship with alcohol. But it's almost like when you're drunk and the room is spinning and you just need to put one foot on the floor, right? I don't know why that came to me right now. But that's sort of what this work is it's like when you're looping through your life and seems like things are just spinning. Work like this, meeting yourself in this way, is an opportunity for you to put one foot on the floor, like an anchor, right? And so that the things can stop spinning around you and you can see things clearly for what they really are. And once you can see things clearly for what they really are and accept that, then you can take the responsibility for your life and make the changes that you need to take yourself from where you are right now to where it is that you want to go. Okay, so that's what we're doing here. And this morning we're here to talk about Pratyahara, which is one of the 8 limbs of yoga, and it's the art, but I'm calling it the skill of going inward, because another thing that I have found is that I think there's just some thinking errors in our minds. I think Hollywood and like our social media leads us to believe that this is like super automatic or super easy. Um, but really, this going inward is some of the deepest work that you'll ever do. I kind of lost my train of thought just then. Please know that like I'm just kind of having this one-sided conversation over here, and sometimes it gets lost. Oh, but this Pratyahara, um, this act, this skill of going inward, see, I always kind of find my way back, is that we kind of think that these things like will just magically save us. It's like, oh, I do yoga, I'm just going to magically feel better. But it's like you have to connect the dots for yourself. You have to make sure that your yoga practice is hitting the buckets that you need it to hit. And sometimes not to micromanage, but sometimes you need to connect that thread. And so for me, like these are skills, these are practices, just like the yoga practice. Anytime you want to make change in your life, it's a practice and it's a skill that you develop. I find that a lot of people, they're like, oh, I can't go inward, I can't meditate, it just doesn't work for me. Well, it doesn't really work for anyone until you practice it, until you develop the skill, until you learn, until you teach your system to operate in a different way than it's operating right now. And our modern world has conditioned us to believe that that's something that happens really automatically, and really it doesn't necessarily take work. It doesn't have to be hard, but it takes focus and it takes intention consistently over time. So you can label that however you'd like to. Okay, so all of that being said, let's take a few deep breaths. I have, ooh, almost burned myself. I lit a candle here. And anytime we practice presence or mindfulness, engaging the senses can be such an impactful way to do that. So if you light a candle and it can be a signal to come into yourself, right? It can be one of your body's senses. It can send you that message of like, oh, we're going to get quiet now. Oh, this next 30 minutes is for you. So if you can light a candle or burn some incense or sage or Palo Santo, um, whichever resonates with you the most. Maybe you diffuse some essential oils. Maybe you rub some essential oils on your body. So smell, olfactory senses, the sense of smell can really kind of transport you into another state of being. So if you have any resources like that that fit for you this morning, I would invite you to light your candle right now. If you don't have that, maybe you could spend this week kind of exploring that. Next week when we come together, you can light the candle that you buy between now and then, or whatever it is that you want to do. So let's go ahead and just take a few moments, close your eyes, take one hand to your heart and one hand to your belly, and let's just breathe separately but together here. Just slow, deep, and full, in and out, maybe in through your nose and out through your mouth. Just grounding into your nervous system, using the mechanism of your breath, grounding into your body, just noticing yourself this morning without the impetus to change yourself or to quote unquote fix yourself. Just be with yourself and notice what you bring today. Notice what it feels like to live inside of you. How did you wake up this morning? Did you wake up with excitement and anticipation and joy? Did you wake up with anxiety and fear and dread? No judgment, just notice. Notice where you are right now so that you can move yourself to where you would like to be. Just with so much gratitude for these social media platforms that allow us to interface and to connect in this way. So much gratitude for these ancient practices. So much reverence for the people and the place and the lands and the culture that make these ancient Eastern gifts possible to us here in the West today. Yeah, So with so much gratitude, so much love, so much presence, take a full breath in right here and a big breath out. Okay. Open your eyes. I invite you, if you have a notebook or anything that you'd like to take notes in, it might be helpful for you today as we talk about Pratyahara. So I'm just going to speak about this for a few minutes, and then we're going to take an inner journey, and then you're going to be on your way. So let's get started. So Pratyahara is one of the 8 limbs of yoga. The 8 limbs of yoga stem from a man named Patanjali. And it's much like the Bible. We don't really know if Patanjali was just one man or a group of men who all contributed together to form this sort of skeleton or the structure of yoga that we've kind of modeled in our modern age. But just like the ancient wisdom of the Bible or all these ancient texts, some of it is kind of a mystery to know how it all came together. But essentially, what Patanjali did is they developed 8 limbs of yoga, these 8 sort of chords that if you devote yourself to kind of step by step, that ultimately it will lead you to the 8th limb, which is samadhi or bliss, this sort of transcendental experience, right? But the way that the 8 limbs are structured is they kind of build on one another. So the first 2 limbs are the yamas and the niyamas. And I almost find myself getting emotional talking about these things because it's so precious and special. And it's something that we don't spend a lot of time on. The reason that I find all of this to be important is that so many of us have a purely physical understanding of the yoga practice, that it's something that we do with our bodies, that we wear yoga clothes and burn calories and bend our bodies in these tricky shapes, and that's part of it, but it's really only a fraction of it. And I think that's what makes me emotional, is that really so many people don't understand that there's such this beautiful body of work that corresponds to yoga that goes so much more deeply than the physical. It's just part of it. So the yamas and the niyamas are sort of these methods for living. I don't know why I can't quite find the word, but there's 5 of each, and the yamas are like the restraints, the ethical standards of living. They tell us what not to do out in community in the world, and then the niyamas are observances, and so they tell us what to do. So the yamas and the niyamas give us this rubric, this sort of rule book, if you will, of how to live inside, how to live outside with oneself and with others. And so these are elements that you can practice all day, every day, just in your life. That's literally taking the yoga off the mat and out into the world by living these yamas and niyamas out in your everyday life. Things about not harming yourself or others, not clinging to things, maintaining pure energy, regulated energy, just these kind of guidelines for how to live well. So those are the first 2 limbs. And then the 3rd limb of yoga is the asana, which is the physical practice, which most of us are very familiar with. So the thinking is that the asana is the way that you show discipline and the way that you show up physically, like you show up with your body, and you invigorate the body through the poses, through the actual movement of the physical yoga. You invigorate your body so that then you can start to quiet and soften the mind. That's the reciprocal relationship between the two, is that as you amp up the body in the yoga practice, the mind begins to soften. And then the 4th limb of yoga in Patanjali's 8 limbs is pranayama. So pranayama is the breath or the life force. Okay, and so all of these start to fuse together as we have the yamas and the niyamas, the ways of being out in the world, and then we have the physical practice itself, and then you match the physical practice with the harness of breath, right? With the harness of the life force. In Chinese medicine, we call it qi, right? So the breath is the way to regulate the life force inside of you. And so when you start to combine the breath and the movement, what you do is you unify the body, you wake up the body using the breath as a way to focus. And what happens is then again, the mind begins to soften, which leads us to our the 5th limb, which is the one that we're here to discuss today, which is Pratyahara. And Pratyahara is this beautiful transition from being active in the body and the mind to going inward and kind of creating this internal experience that's separate from what's happening out in the world. And this is like the first step into meditation, right? So in Pratyahara, you cut off your connection to the outer world and turn your gaze inward. You focus on the senses, so cutting off the sound, cutting off what you can see, the vision, really cutting off those external processors so that you can use all those processors to go inward and process and see what's inside. Okay, and so this is the withdrawal of the senses. We cut the cord to the outer world so that we can be deeply connected to the inner world. And then it's the pratyahara, the ability, the skill, the act of going inward that then creates the canvas for the following limbs, which are dharana, which are concentration or focus inward. It might be like the focus on the third eye on the inside. Maybe it's the focus of a mantra or a chant on the inside. And then that leads to dhyana, which is the ability to focus inwardly without having to hold a focal point, right? Of just inward meditation without having to focus on something to make it happen for yourself. And then that then leads to samadhi. So today we're here to talk about and to really practice this ability to cut ourselves off from the outside world and begin to go inward. Okay, and why is this important? What are your thoughts? Can you type it in the chat? Why do you think that this would be important for us to develop the skill of going inward in our modern day and age? And also, why do you find that this could be difficult? Why do we not talk about this more, do you think? What are your thoughts? I'd love to hear you drop them in the chat if you have anything that you'd like to share. I have my own thoughts. So here's what I think. Everyone wants to feel more peace. Everyone wants to feel more grounded. Like everyone wants to feel better in their bodies, in the systems that they each inhabit. However, not everyone wants to sort through and sift through all the barriers that prevent them from doing so, right? We want the end result, but we want it to be automatic. And our culture has a very strange relationship with resistance. And since I became a coach, and really especially in this last 6 months to 12 months, this concept has really shifted itself for me, is that resistance is actually a beautiful thing. What we normally, when left unchecked, if you were to start a meditation practice and you go and sit down and you close your eyes and you start breathing and all this shit comes up for you, mostly what people do is they say, oh, meditation isn't for me. My brain doesn't work like that. Some people can do that, but I can't do that. So we take whatever resistance that we experience it and we make it mean no. We make it mean that this is the wrong path, right? But really we have resistance because it feels foreign, because it goes completely counterculturally to sit with oneself, to cut oneself off from the outer world and just sit with what you find inside. Who does that? Where do we see examples of that in our actual lives? I mean, we see people like elsewhere, like out in caves meditating, like of other religions or cultures or spiritualities, right? That's like the gurus or the Brahmins or whomever, right? But we don't know, we don't see that in our everyday lives. Like what we see instead is constant stimulation. The TV's always on. Everybody's always talking. You got to be doing something all the time. Nobody wants to be bored. What you are bored? Scroll, 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 scroll. What does that do to you? Your eyes are constantly receiving and processing information. Your ears constantly taking in sound, processing information. Your emotions constantly taking in, processing. Your brain constantly taking in, processing. That's the world that we live in. Okay, that's what our world encourages. Our world encourages us to always be on, to always be hustling, to always be figuring something out, right? That everything that we do is mental and logical. So always turn on your mind, figure it out, figure it out, figure it out, solve the problem, right? And so that's the world that we're living in. It's a pressure cooker and it never stops, right? Anyone else? This is the game that we're playing. And so when people start to experience negative effects from this, like not being able to sleep, not being able to regulate their sleep wake cycles, turning to food for comfort, turning to substances, alcohol, drugs to numb out, to get the processors to shut off, to get the external processing to stop. So many people have to numb themselves to get that to shut down instead of developing the skills, right, to do it naturally, right? And that's what we're here to talk about today. So that's the why for me. The why is that we need this because our world touts and preaches the exact opposite, and it's harming all of us, right? It's harming all of us because we never get to turn off. We never get to take a break from the constant input that comes in, and we don't even know that we're doing it most times, right? We just think that it's the way that it is. But what I'm here to say is I'm here to raise my hand and say you don't have to live that way, right? You can recognize the constant steady stream of input that's coming in into your system, into your vessel, into your field all day, every day. And you can choose for yourself to practice the skill of taking a break from all of that, right? Practicing the skill of cutting off the input from the outside world so that you can have a break, have a respite, go inward, gather your inner resources, gather up, shore up your defenses, so to speak, and then go back out into the world, right? Renewed, restored, grounded, and full. Okay? So that's the why. And this is why yoga for me too, right? This is and it's such an interesting conversation. I was talking to some friends yesterday. I think that when we talk about taking these Eastern principles and incorporating them into our Western world, I'm a white woman, and there's also always talks of cultural appropriation, right? And it's really difficult because um there's so much honor and reverence for the cultures that these practices stemmed from. And also, this truth is universal, and it is meant to help all people, right? All people are suffering, right? And so, the way, in my mind, to make this right is to really practice yoga at its core, to not just do the poses, to not just try to look cute in your Lululemons, which believe me, I want to look cute in my yoga clothes too. But that's not what it's about. And the way that we honor that and the way that we respect that is to really live it in our lives, is to do things differently and to not pick and choose the parts of these practices that are bright and shiny and easy, but to rather say, if I'm going to practice physical elements, I'm going to try it all on. I'm going to try to let it permeate me from the inside out in all ways, right? And so this is just one more opportunity for you to deepen and honor your experience and expression of yoga, and to really let it touch you, to really let it touch you, to really let it change you, and to let it help you, to let the medicine in. Okay. So I would invite you now, we're going to kind of practice this. So I would invite you now to find a comfortable meditative position for your body. It can be laying down, you can be seated, you might even lean up against a wall so that you can maintain a strong, long spine, excuse me, without having to stress your body out to hold that position. So again, just like I said at the top of our time together, is that, whatever rules you've heard about meditation, now is not the time to be preoccupied with those. Now is the time to let the goodness in. So it's really hard to let the goodness in when your body is super uncomfortable, okay? So find a comfortable space, lay back, close your eyes, and just begin to breathe. Notice that just by being with the breath can change everything. Notice that just by closing the eyes down, that can change everything. And if you have an eye mask or an eye pillow or something you'd like to place over your eyes to make things even darker, I invite you to do so now. So this is a journey inward. And I'm not going to play music or anything because then Instagram won't publish the video because of copyright issues. So this is just, let that be a good thing. Just let the silence wash over you. And as you lay back or sit tall or wherever it is that you find yourself, I'd invite you to picture yourself as though you're floating. As though you're floating in this big, beautiful, buoyant body of water. Maybe it's down a river or in a lake, the ocean. Maybe it's in a pool or a pond, something that's less deep. Just feel how light and weightless your body seems as you picture this for yourself. Just allow yourself to be held, to be free, to be weightless. And as you bob and flow in the water that you find yourself in, I'd ask you to sort of get in touch with your energy, the energy that lives inside of you, and the energy that lives outside of you. So start to notice what you're worried about or what you're concerned about, what your energy is focused on right now in this moment that isn't you. Right? And we have to notice this part. So don't try to make it prettier than it is. Don't try to say, oh, I don't think about anything. Right now is the time where we want to notice the resistance. So just kind of notice. What are you worried about right now? Where is your energy going that isn't to you? And this is kind of an interesting question to ask yourself. If your energy is being taken by people or things who aren't in your physical realm, that's always sort of a curious thing to notice, right? No judgment, just awareness and compassion. So start to notice. You might be worried about family members that don't live in state and how that's working. You might be worried about your partner or your child. You might be feeling burdened by a project at work or the path that your career is taking right now. Start to get a sense for all these burdens. And as you do so, as you float and bob in this buoyant water, maybe start to picture your connection to these worries and burdens like anchors, right? Attached to these ropes that are bound to you. Right? And start to see where you have dropped your anchor outside of yourself. Can you see that right now? So maybe your anchor is with your family. Maybe your anchor, maybe you have lots of them. I know I do. Perhaps you have anchors that just go out to the world at large, to the stress of the greater world, Ukraine, the election that's coming up, our global politics, things like that. Where have you given your energy that is not you? What is taking your focus out of your life now? And can you just get present to that and just see all these little mini anchors that kind of pull you away from your own internal experience? Can you get clear on those? Again, no judgment, nothing has gone wrong. This is all just part of being human, that we care about things, we care about people, and that over time, they might take our energy, take our resources. That's okay, we're just noticing. So now this act of Pratyahara, right, is taking all of these anchors that we've thrown down, that we've embedded in things that aren't us, right? In the external world, maybe the anchors right now aren't so deep, so to speak. Maybe it's the TV in the next room, or your kids in the next room, or the thing that you need to do after this, right? Maybe some of the anchors that are pulling you away are superficial. Maybe some are deep and long lasting. You just get to choose what feels most resonant to you. And then with your mind and your heart and your breath, I would invite you now to just gently, softly begin to pick up the anchors that live outside of you. Pull all that rope back in close, and then drop the anchor down back inside yourself. And just see that. See that and do that internally as many times as you like. Where you say, okay, I'm worried about this, but just for now, I'm going to pick up that anchor, I'm going to reel it back in, and I'm going to drop it back down inside of me. So it's like all the tentacles that pull you away from your own beingness. All you're doing now is simply pulling them back inward, curling all those tendrils back in on yourself, taking all those heavy burdens that pull you away from who you are, your own energy, your own essence, pulling them close and then dropping them back down. I'll give you the opportunity to re-extend those anchors later, so don't worry about that part right now. What I'd like for you to do now is, once your anchors are all pulled in, is to just be and breathe and notice what you find here. If you can, keep your eyes closed. If you can, minimize the external noise that's coming in. Retreat inside. Gather the anchors that you have dropped outwardly. Pull them in and drop them down inside of you. Your job is to simply be here, and we'll just hold this space for a couple of minutes in silence. Again, if it becomes uncomfortable, if you have resistance, please know that that doesn't mean that this isn't for you. It just means that you're cultivating the ability to sit with yourself in this way. So as you see the resistance come up, just be with it. If it feels uncomfortable, just breathe and sit with it anyway if you can. If it feels scary, just notice you're safe here. Just breathe and be with it if you can. Many of us don't like to go inward because we don't like the way that it feels once we're inside ourselves. Nonetheless, we learn the skill, knowing that the more we practice, the easier it becomes. When my thoughts start to creep back in, I like to use the mechanism of my breath to drown it out. In yoga, we call this Ujjayi pranayama, where you breathe. It's sort of like Darth Vader, they say. It's like an oceanic whispering sound on the back of your throat. I'll try to do it loud enough so that you can hear, but I find that this is a helpful tool to drown out any pesky thoughts that come up so that I can just stay inward without having to fight. It sounds a little something like this. Can you just allow whatever it is that you find on the inside? Just allow it and be with it. You don't have to solve it or fix it. Let's just take a few more deep breaths together here. Can you feel how over time, the more you practice this, that this could become a refuge for you? A safe place where you can protect yourself from all the inputs that the world has to offer you constantly. A refuge where you can go inward to be safe, to be grounded, to be clear, and to be held. An inward retreat that you might draw yourself away from the tentacles of the outer world and develop a beautiful inner sanctuary, a beautiful inner world that you can heal from, create from, and grow from. And take a full breath in and a full breath out. Gently blink your eyes open as you're ready. I'm not quite ready. Oh, goodness. And come on back nice and gently. For me, the way that I know that this is quote unquote working for me is that I don't want to stop, right? Is that I truly feel like there's something, instead of meditation just being a task or something that I have to complete, it's something that truly in the moment feels nourishing. And it doesn't always, it doesn't always feel like that, right? It's just like anything else. It's like a relationship, a marriage. Like there's good times and bad times. There's neutral times. There's all sorts of times. It's the same way with these lifelong practices like yoga or meditation or doing the self-work, right? But more times than not, like I long for this inner world. I love this inner world. And this was really saying something coming from a woman who drank alcohol for decades because she couldn't be with herself, right? I had such a hard time just being in my own inner space that I had to drink alcohol to numb myself from what I found there. And now I'm here to tell you that when I go inward, I don't want to leave because it makes me feel so nourished and so protected and so strong that sometimes I just want to stay in this cocoon that I've created for myself. So I'm very proud of that. I'm very proud that I have been able to create this inner shelter, this inner place for myself through my journey in yoga, through what yoga has taught me. These skills, they work. And they've worked for me and they've worked for thousands and thousands of years. And I know that they can work for you too, right? We just have to see them a little bit differently so that we can use them in our modern Western world in a way that honors where these practices came from and heals us where we are. So I hope that this practice of Pratyahara has been useful for you. Know that you can do this at any time during the day. You can go into your car and take a 5-minute time out. You can practice this in the form of daily morning meditation. You can even run away into the bathroom and just do this for 2 minutes during the day if you need to, if you want to, right? So again, practice this in the way that feels accessible to you so that you can start to reap the benefits and then allow it to grow from there. And if you coach with me, this is something that we can work on. When I coach with my clients, we work on not only mindset, but also integrative tools to help the mindset really get into your body and change your life. I always say that thought work is only as good as your body can believe you, right? So it's this integration, this harmony of the mind body work that can really help you to change your life, to change your course, to change your direction, and to create a new way of being, a new way of showing up in your life. And so this is what I work on with my clients, is that not just the thought work, but the integrative somatic practices to help it all come alive. So I love you all so much. I hope that this was useful for you. Reach out to me. Let me know how this impacts you. Practice this for this next week. Come back. Let me know how it goes. I love you all so much. I'm with you all the way. Namaste.